following podcast is a Jill Devine Media production.
You can still be pretty badass about winning, right? You can be hardcore all the time and yet celebrate failure. You can still push to be number one and yet look at not only the score or the outcome as the definer of, was that a successful exhibition for you and or your team? They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
This episode of Two Kids and a Career is brought to you by Elemental Aesthetics. You can be guaranteed that your experience is going to be unique and customized to your specific needs. See how they can help you focus on natural beauty enhancements by visiting elementalaesthetics.com. Hi there, and welcome to Two Kids and a Career. I'm Jill Devine. As an entrepreneur, wife, and mama, the daily grind of trying to build a business while taking care of kids and trying to maintain a healthy connection with my hubby, it's a lot. With this podcast, you're going to hear candid conversations with other moms, parenting experts who can share their knowledge and insight, or you'll just hear me rambling to get it all out. There's going to be tears, there's going to be laughter, but most importantly, there will be support. Take a listen and connect with me so we can grow and learn from one another. This is Two Kids and a Career. Welcome to episode 107, and this week's guest, we are no strangers to one another. She might be a stranger to you, but actually, Jen, you're not even a stranger to this podcast, because let me back it up. So in episode 66, your sister, Cynthia, received a Supermom shout out, which people can nominate the Supermom in their life by going to jilldevine.com. And you nominated your sister. It was incredible. You can read the nomination and hear it actually with episode 66. And then Cynthia was my guest on episode 81, How Being a Better Version of Yourself Will Help Others. And you and your sister are super close. And of course, she talked about you in that episode, but now it's your turn. Officially welcoming you to the podcast, Jen Siess Gansner. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here. I kind of kicked myself after I nominated her because I was like, dang it, she beat me to the podcast. We're a tiny bit, we love each other, but rest assured, we are a tiny bit competitive. So
yes, you two are. And I love it. I'm so excited to talk to you because of this new venture that is much needed. And it's like so topical too, with things that happened not that long ago with Simone Biles, things that happened like even when I would play sports, and I'll talk about golf, but we'll get there. First though, you didn't just hop into this, but I feel like you've been preparing yourself, and it's just one of those God things, you like just all of a sudden go, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. So let's back it up, Jen, as far as career goes. and actually, and then that's another thing that we have in common is radio and where we went to school, but you also have to tie in your soccer love. So you've got the floor. You can wrangle it all together.
Oh gosh. Right. So yeah. So maybe like a lot of people right now anymore, when we grew up, and you're just like my sister, a little bit younger than me. So when we kind of grew up, by the time you're in second, third grade, you're already getting the questions of, who do you want to be someday? Or what do you want to do? And I was always super jealous of the students who, and they may not be what they said they were going to be, but, with a surety, shot their hands up in the air and they, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be a nurse, or I want to be a teacher. And I was like, I don't know. So I would put my hand up and I would think of like, what's something cooler than anybody else said? And I'd be like, I'm going to be president, right? Like I would just, pick something. I was already a born achiever. So it was like, let's pick something cool. So I spent most of my youth really honestly being a lot like the athletes I currently coach. I don't think I ever really had a clear sight of this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. So you're right. Like I think life kind of set me up to come here accidentally, but maybe not. Right. But it's certainly not a path I thought of, back then. I didn't think I'm going to be a private coach. I'm going to be in coaching at all, was not even my path. So like my sister, grew up, got good grades, pleaser, and then started playing sports. I think I was actually late to the sports game a little bit, CYC, kind of the recreational ball. And my dad, mom signed me up, and I happened to be, I guess, a pretty decent natural athlete, and then just started to play soccer, then softball, then basketball. Played those when, oh gosh, I think it was in 4th grade. And so that's kind of late when select soccer, there's so many select, competitive opportunities now, but there weren't back then. And it was kind of in its birth. So starting that, I think in 4th grade, and I was just coaching a high school soccer team yesterday. They're getting ready for tryouts. And I said, I joked with them and I said, I feel like I was the overscheduled athlete before that was a thing. So I
Yes.
was in high school, I was a 3-sport athlete. So every season I was in season, then I had 2 select sports as well. So yeah, busy. We were all, and then Cynthia, of course, followed our path, and our brothers did much of the same. So busy parents, busy student, which was probably a really good thing in a way. Kept me out of trouble, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
thing that goes around I see on Facebook was like, I can't go to that. I have practice. I can't tell you the number of times I had to say that. Then you and I, of course, met at Lindenwood. I ended up doing my thing, I think, was really just like, what's something to achieve? Go get it. Right. And so I want straight A's, so go get straight A's. I'm going to play. Dad said I have to play that sport. Sometimes he signed me up for an all boys team once when basketball didn't have enough competition. I was like, okay, I have to do that. I was not happy about it. Um, then, it was, you know, each season there was a sport, so I played a sport. And so then I went to college, and I fortunately had a combined kind of education and sports scholarship, and played in the fall for varsity there, and then decided to double major because I there was actually a girl, I think she was a year or two older than me, but was there, and I think by the time we had all gotten done, maybe had gotten 3 degrees. Um, and it was kind of this the running not so nice joke at the time was that, she's a professional student, right? Just
Mm.
and I actually wondered that about myself. I thought, I've been so good for such a long time at being a really great student, and not because I'm super smart or anything, because I was just freaked out to fail, so I would study really hard, that I think I always wondered, like, what does that look like when, school's all over? So what did I do? Like a good like a good student, I went on to get a master's degree. Just keep that going.
Just keep going. Keep going.
Right. So yeah, I went out to Denver for that for 2 years after Lindenwood, got my degree, and then spent 2 more years out in Colorado because it's Colorado,
Mm.
and it's awesome. And then I think I kind of came back to St. Louis, and actually right before 2000. So I rung in and that part of our, millennia, I guess, back in St. Louis, and was right back to square one again. It's like, okay, now I'm done with all the school. I didn't want to go get my PhD. I was schooled out by that time. And there was nothing specific I wanted to go get it in. And so it was like, oh, okay, I got to be a big girl now and like stop, like I'm not doing school, so it's time to do something. So I really kind of waffled back and forth between radio. I went back to KMOX for a while, produced there, did project management, tried to do things in my degree field. And then, as I'm sure you know, I got married and had children, and that changed everything. So my 30s were those years of, for me anyway, a complete, I wasn't not wanting to do it. I just hadn't really realized the impact that decade would have on my life. So yeah, kids.
Yep, they change everything.
And they really do. So it's funny when I look back and, as like told you, I tell long stories. I like to say that I'm an accidental coach. So I never set out, sports psychology was a degree at the time. It just wasn't something that I thought of much. And I didn't know what path there was there. So I went into industrial organizational psychology, psychology in the workplace. I thought, well, that'll always have a job, right? And so it was actually when I was getting that degree out in Colorado, in Denver, that my former Tim Champion was a coach at Lindenwood, and then he moved on to SLU, and now he's an AD over at Melville High School. But he gave me a call. He'd come out there and go skiing, and we'd go skiing every once in a while together, as one of my former coaches. And he called me and said, "Hey, I think you should coach." And I was, oh gosh, 24. And I'm like, no. He's like, no, there's a local girls select club in Littleton. And a couple of guys I know, you don't have to be the head coach. Like, you don't have to do any of the work. Like, just go there and they need help at practice. And I was like, he's like, hey, Siess, it's going to be great for your resume. You should do this. Girls need to have girl coaches, which was interesting because I had only had one by that time in high school. And then actually a second, one in high school, one in college. And so I was like, okay. So I went out and started working with this team and quickly fell in love with them. Of course, they were 11-year-old girls. How can you not? And I got to see a bunch of little mini me's in a way. It was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of where I was and who I was. And so just in Colorado alone, I started helping a couple of teams in Denver. And when I moved out to Grand Junction, started when you go and people realize that you've played, of course, right? And then they realized you've done some coaching, they reach out for help and you can't say no. So I coached, I think 9-year-old girls, 13-year-old boys. They were fun. And then I came back to St. Louis and I kind of had a little bit, I helped my brother out. He had kids. And then it was when I had kids. So that's when I find a lot of people accidentally start coaching because your kids are playing. And then coaches are needed. And these aren't paid positions. They're starting in CYC or they're starting in maybe a select team. But you need coaches. And so here I was, I've spent probably a collective 20 years team coaching. And I had no idea that would be a primary skill when I look back to where I was in high school.
Tell me about your kids. Well, not me. Tell the listener about your kids.
Right.
Because I know.
Right. So in 2006, I had my George, and he is 15, almost 16. He's a sophomore at Kirkwood High School. And by the way, he knows everything. So if anybody needs, just ask him because, he's at that age. And then Marin came along. She's 13 and followed by Liam, who is almost 11. Fifth grader. And then we have our Harper who just turned 6 and she's in kindergarten. And, this kind of, again, one of those things where I didn't grow up thinking I wouldn't have kids, but I also didn't grow up with that as a primary goal. So to look back now and be like, oh my gosh, and now I have 4 of them. No wonder a whole decade's gone.
Right. No wonder you're just now getting to what you are meant to do.
Maybe, right. Exactly.
So before we get into what you've created, which is Mind to Define and what that's all about, well, actually, let's talk about that because I have so many different thoughts about sports and where we're going and the mental part. And it's just striking to me that this is finally happening, at least around me in my area, which I know that even if you aren't in the St. Louis area, you're still able to contact you, Jen. But talk to me about Mind to Define, and then I will throw my thoughts in there after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I want to hear them. So again, I feel like, gosh, maybe this was just what I was accidental. I have to stress that like so much, like this wasn't a goal. So I kind of have I sort of have a COVID story, which I mean, a lot of people, right, maybe started changing directions. And mine was that I knew a direction was coming and just had a whole lot of time to think about it because we were all stuck home with, kids learning and can't go out and do anything, of course. But I already knew ahead of time that the year after COVID would be my last child's first year in kindergarten, right? So we're not going to go to daycare anymore. I've got them all in the same school district. And it was really one of those things where I have never not worked. I've always done like project work we and George, we started a soccer club in 2015, a small soccer club. So I kind of ran that for 8 years. That was my job. But it was one of those things where it's like, okay, it's time to get back in. I don't want to go back traditionally. I've already done that. Been there, done that. And I kept getting just feedback from my sister, from people around me, like, why don't you coach? And I was like, I was kind of done with team coaching. like coaching teams. And, you know, there are people a whole lot more qualified than me to take a soccer team to another competitive level. So it just wasn't a place I wanted to go. And there was a player actually that was a softball player. She is a softball player. And Marin, my second born, had played some select softball with her. And I could always see that when this player went up to the plate, she could hit, by the way, a country mile. Like, she is a stud hitter, but it wouldn't transfer to the plate. And as I was standing there one game, and this is actually, by the way, a couple of years ago, several years ago, her mom was there and dad's the coach. Great job, great coach, great guy. But of course, it's hard to draw that line between being coach, dad, mom, and then watching your player doing what they love to do and seeing their struggle in the moment, and then sometimes not just struggle, but seeing their pain. And that's hard. And so I remember my friend like leaning over to her and saying, "You know why she's going to strike out, right?" Because she's like, "She's going to strike out." And I was like, "But do you know why?" And she said, "No, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Look at the way she approaches the plate. Like, she's already, if I could have put a microphone in her head right now, I would bet you it's all negative self-talk. It's all like, don't miss. It's all like, don't let my team down. It's probably overwhelm. So it's this overload of negativity. And then you almost kind of find it becomes what does everybody say? A self-fulfilling prophecy." So like I said, that was several years back. So as I was thinking about this kind of coaching business that I hadn't even named yet, I reached out to my mom friend and said, "Hey, is your daughter still having some issues with that?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, do you mind if I kind of take a chance with her and I will work with her and see if I can help her, just see if there's anything I can do?" So I kind of built my program sort of with a player. I took a coaching course too, because I'm a good nerd student and I like, if there's a course to take, I'll take it. I'm a good girl. How do you do this? And so we started working together, and all the players, all the athletes do the work. But we were able to make some movement. And then, oh gosh, just August of last year, I didn't even have my website done. It's still not done, but I had social up, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I typically have to do, and that's make an uncomfortable move. If I can always wait. I'm a perfectionist, so I can always wait for the perfect moment. So I threw it out there, and in a week I had 5 players. And I happened to do it at a good time. It was August, new seasons were starting, high school seasons were starting. We were back to a little bit of normalcy when it comes to athletics. And I was like, "Oh gosh, this might be as needed as I thought it was." And here I am.
I started having some flashbacks from what you were talking about with this girl. And I had played softball, same like deal. I didn't start until probably 6th grade or maybe like 6th or 7th grade, and then played through high school, but it was like a CYC or something like that, and I remember my cousin we're close, and he was a stud baseball player and played through college, and his parents, which were they would always come and support us when we would play sports and stuff. And so I remember, I mean, I was in high school. I can seriously, when you were talking about this girl, I distinctly remember this. I always played second base, and they put me in the outfield, and I totally had no clue. Like, the ball was coming and I was way ahead of it. Like, way I had no understanding. Like, I didn't get it, and I felt like a loser. Like, the fact that I couldn't catch this ball that was hit. And was I the most amazing player ever? No, but I did love it, and I did want to impress my family. I wanted to impress the people that came and saw me, and that was very defeating. Like, I remember being so embarrassed that after the game, you can go get your team sodas. Like, I didn't even
Yeah,
say
we did team
hi to
sodas.
my yeah, I would not say hi to my aunt or my uncle or my cousin. I wouldn't even talk to
Oh,
my parents. Like, I was so embarrassed. And so that came to mind. And then I mentioned golf earlier because it's just a joke for myself. I like golf. I don't play it. I mean, it's just been a long time, but I would always laugh because you're not supposed to talk. I'm like, just talk. Stop looking at me and just talk. Like, I don't care if you're talking. I don't want to focus on me. Just talk. Like, I don't know how these people do it, especially professional
right, right.
golf players. Like, they're in these tournaments and people are all watching you. Anyway, those were some of the thoughts that came to mind, and, I was a coach and definitely would have loved to if that was the path I was going to take, I should have taken some more courses and stuff, but I mean, when you do have that impact with your athlete, it's amazing, but there were so many times, like, mental blocks, especially coming with, like, tumbling and stuff, and was like, "I don't understand. You can do this I don't know, 8 out of 10 times or I no, 10 out of 10 times, and so I was thinking also when you were talking about have you watched the documentary Cheer on Netflix?
I have not. I have seen it up there, but I haven't played it, no.
Spoiler alert, but in the 2nd season, one of the they could say that this girl falling out of her, skill with stunting cost them their championship, and I thought about like, honestly, as I was watching it, I thought, if you had the wrong individual in there who could do something very damaging to their life because they thought that they were solely responsible for a championship, it made me so sad and sick to my stomach at the same time. So that's where I'm like wanting to talk about that mental thing and all of the pressures that come with playing a sport. And I know you've seen it. It's enhanced over these years.
Oh, it has. It hasn't gotten any easier, that's for sure. What has gotten better is the physical side of everything that we do in sports, right? So even just, I mean, you probably saw it also in cheer. You can probably put it in almost any sport, but I'll go ahead and bring it to soccer since that was the one I kind of ended on. But softball is actually very much the same way too. Baseball is, we go to soccer practice, you just go to practice, couple of hours because you're probably only practicing once if you're serious, maybe twice, a
Right.
week back then. It's like, oh
Right.
my gosh, these now you're having 3 and 4 weeks, 3 times, 4 times a week. But, you know, and depending, I'm not saying everybody did this, but back in where St. Louis was pretty decent at soccer at the time and I had good coaches, but we spent probably the majority of the time on the tactical portion, right? So what kid doesn't raise their hand and say, "Are we scrimmaging?" Right? That's what we all wanted to do. You wanna play the game, we wanna practice the game and play the game and then go play a real game. We didn't wanna spend time we definitely didn't wanna run. We didn't wanna do conditioning.
Right.
And then there was a time when the thing about, like, you would learn a few ball skills, but not like it is today. So now I might have a kid going to a practice where it's going to be 90 minutes of technical training. So the skilling, right? It's all the moves, the dribbling, the touching, the receiving. And then the next practice might be heavily focused on tactics, right? How we play the game. But that focus, those kinds of focuses that kids are getting now, isn't something that I got until I was in college. Practices very much, we took some shots, sure, we did some passing, but the level of technical training, I didn't get till I was 19 years old. And, arguably a little too old for that in some ways because I was terrified of not knowing certain skills. And now I've got my 6-year-old who's already learning a move that I hadn't touched until I was 19. So we know that the physical side has changed a lot and for the better, right? So that's why we're turning out better athletes. That's why, and they're more fit usually. But what hasn't changed and what is slowly changing is the attention to the mental side. And I'm not even talking about, you mentioned Simone Biles and you're exactly right. There's nothing like having a high level athlete saying that this is important so that we know that it's important for everything down there. And she got to a point, and I can't speak for her, right, where it's mental pressure and you're looking at breakdown, and breakdown could lead to a significant physical injury, like loss of a life in the things that she does, if not your, paralysis. And so if you're not all in your head, then you better not do that. But even just the smaller things about mental are important. When you were talking about, Jill, your moment in softball, like I've got moments like that I can think of too, where it's like the spotlight goes on you and everything else is, you do to talk video talk, right? The rec focuses in on you. The background is blurred out and all you feel in that moment is this incredible pressure. And we've got our kids doing that now all the time.
Yeah.
And we haven't equipped them, or we rarely equip them, even when I was team training and I had a psych degree, with how to handle those things. We're used to what we all grew up learning. Shake it off, right? Shake it off, be
Yeah.
tough, be confident. And it's all meant in a good way. But usually you'll get many players, not everybody, but if you're like me, they're in their head already going, yeah, that's great. How do I do that? Right? You showed me this physical skill how to do, but like, how do I get out of my own head? And can you really? The answer is probably no. But like, how do I come into flow, right? How do I access those points? And so it just, I don't know, something about sitting in an office and trying to I have scratch papers full of just notes that trying to think of like what to call it, what would I work on? And I realized looking back, I have been you in that softball story so many times. And the times that I did do what I had dreamed of doing, or I did fall into flow, or I did access something, I think one of two ways. And it was always accidental. I either accidentally forgot to think because maybe I was taken by surprise. I didn't have time to be in my head. Something just happened and I had to react. That's why I was a better third baseman than I was a shortstop. That extra hot got me every time. Not because I wasn't a good athlete, but because I had time to think. The other time that I was able to access, what I would, my personal greatness, was usually when I got mad. So I had an overflow of an emotion that blocked out the worry. It blocked out, and so I got angry and I was like, I'm done with this. And then something good happened. And so even through college, I can tell you, Jill, on that field at Lindenwood, Tim would often say, like, if I was there on the line, he knew the one thing I didn't want to do was take a player on 1v1. I would much rather, I was fast. I want to push the ball back behind and run. I don't want to take them on because taking them on meant they might take the ball from me. And then I lost the ball from my team. And so he'd be in my ear on the sideline. He didn't yell very much, but he'd yell at me and he'd say, go at that player one-on-one. And it was sometimes it took that direct command from him. And sometimes I still didn't do it because the fear of failure was so great.
So how are we changing that? How are you changing that?
Well, I'm not the first. So, when I went ahead and I took a course on how to be a personal coach, right? Because I didn't really know. And, you do some market research and kind of see if this is out there. And there are a few people out there doing that. And then you could look at sports psychologists who are going to raise their hand and be like, I've been doing this for years. A lot of times they've been doing it at the professional levels, right? And we haven't seen it down at the lower levels when it comes to youth, right? Even if they're youth and they're being tagged as MLS, one of the local clubs has like an MLS Next program. So even at age 10, that top team is being identified as, really top soccer players right now. Maybe they'll move on, maybe they won't. So anyway, back to your question of what we're doing now is there are a few people out there doing this. There's a lady in California that has something called Alpha Confidence. It's an online program. She kind of takes people, total elite competitor. I believe they're also on the West Coast. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the first, which is actually kind of good because this means that there's other people seeing a need for this. And on the men's side of sports too, there have been sports psychologists, there are mental trainers. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks have now a full staff for the mental side of the game. It's trickling down into college D1. And it should, if they're going to go there one day, who couldn't benefit from, mental skills training? Because performance is performance, right? It doesn't matter if you're up there getting rated against another cheer team and it's a competition, if you're one-on-one with somebody in a chess tournament final, if you're up on George, my oldest sings, if you're up on stage performing, performance is performance. So, and that's usually, just like you talked about, where we find athletes that struggle, when they struggle, it's not always usually at practice. It's usually in, high pressure, what we call maximum performance moments, which are games or performances. And so what I'm looking to do is, when I looked back on all the moments that I loved, and I didn't realize this until this last year or two, when I coached kids. Yes, I loved teaching them how to cut the ball. Yes, I loved teaching them how to appropriately strike the ball, right? There's a place on your foot where you do that correctly. There's a place on your foot and how you rotate your foot and how to pass the ball. But when I looked back, I realized that my favorite moments were always mental ones for the kids I coached. So even if they did a move with their weak foot, or that's a big one in soccer when they're young, they only want to shoot with their strong foot, their dominant foot. They don't want to shoot with their weak foot because it usually is not a very good shot. And what I realized with one of my teams was, if I don't make them do this, they're never going to want to do it because it's comfortable to run around the ball. And so I started, I think it was a bit Pavlovian, like the Pavlov's dog. Like they knew, they were 8 or 9 years old. And I told them, I said, I'm not punishing you, but there will be a direct consequence if I see you run around the ball. You're going to get subbed out. You'll go back in. You're not in trouble. But I had to take away that block that they had to not kick the ball correctly with the foot it was on. I had to remove that for them so that they could feel comfortable. And then I also, by the way, I had to celebrate the failure, right? So when my player, Katie, who probably would have scored with her right foot, but appropriately took the shot with her left foot and it didn't go in, and we didn't win the game, I had to be willing to recognize, celebrate that, and call that a win, right? Call that a success. What I do with a lot of players is we look to have them really take charge of their performance, break down like defining moments, just like I talked about, and redefine sometimes what success looks like. And then, for the girls and the players I work with, we create strategies and we try to apply them to both sports and, life. We know that work often parallels our home lives, right? Sometimes we bring our work home and vice versa. Well, the kids do too. What I often see is what happening on their teams might be happening at school or vice versa. Drama in the hallways could be drama at practice. And I think that mental skills can be used anywhere for all of us at any age.
Before we continue with this week's conversation, I would like to talk to you about Elemental Aesthetics, a sponsor of the podcast. And I love that they are now doing memberships because it's a really great thing for a couple of reasons. You're going to save money, and I am all about saving money, but it's also a reminder to take care of you. Self-care is so important. So let me tell you about some of the membership options that you have available from Elemental Aesthetics. There are 2 membership options for you. The Elemental Essential, which is $99 a month, and then you have the Elemental Elite, which is $199 a month. Under both of these membership packages, there are certain services you can choose from and then certain add-ons that you get, such as you can go in the salt room or the infrared sauna a certain number of times a month, which, oh my gosh, that salt room, amazing. And then depending on the membership, you get a certain discount off of products and guaranteed pricing on certain products as well, like Botox. To learn more about these memberships and to start taking care of you and saving some money, head to elementalaesthetics.com. Again, it's elementalaesthetics.com. Check out those membership options and start to feel amazing. Let's get back into it with this week's conversation. I don't want to start a argument or that's not what this is about. I do want to ask though, like your opinion on really, are we expecting too much of our kids when it comes to these sports? Or, I mean, or is it something that I just don't understand? Because, like you said, the way we had grown up, it was once a week practices for like maybe an hour, and it has evolved so much. And for example, when I was in high school and I was a cheerleader, it was clear. I mean, you tried out, it was either you made freshman as a freshman, JV as a sophomore, and only juniors and seniors could make varsity. And so then when I came in to coach, this whole new level of competition was in front of my eyes, where that's when all-star cheer was becoming a thing, club cheer was a thing, and so these athletes would come in, and some of them were part of that, and it was like they had to choose, and I felt like, "Well, wait a minute, I always had the loyalty to my high school because that was the only thing that was there at
Right.
that time, and you're gonna risk that by going to a club sport." It's just this, I mean, there's no right answer, I understand that. There's benefits and there are definitely negative aspects to everything as well. I just am a little worried about what is happening.
Yeah, you know what? I don't you're right. There's really no good answer to that. Like in some ways I super love it, right? And but then again I can already tell you my mom does not, right? So my mom's in her 80s and she's like this is, she's got a different point of view and she thought I was overscheduled, right? So she's like you guys do too much, the kids do too much, but I will tell you what I find is, the way kids socialize anymore, if they're athletic, and maybe it's with other interests as well, right? Anything, they socialize more via organized something, right? An organized sport
Yeah.
or an organized activity versus, you go out in your neighborhood and you run around till the light bulb on the porch flips and then you better get your butt home and don't get in trouble. Right?
Right,
So
right.
those are, I think, very few and far between anymore. So organized sports is just one of the many ways kids organize. I mean, my daughter, I will tell you, like she sees soccer practice and she's on a very high level team as just as much as a social experiment as she does the athletic experiment. Now, I'm also very fortunate. She's got a really awesome coach. The girls, that are on the team all mesh together really nicely, both on and off the pitch. So that's also awesome. And so it can depend. And then I think the parent expectations on those groups, hey, not that, don't get me wrong, if it comes down between my daughter and her other player that I also really like, I'd like to see my daughter get more of the minutes, right? That's just it. But at the same time, we're on a really great team that actually happens. We cheer everybody. The culture is really good. So I think if you have that, that's really awesome. It's when you don't have that sometimes is the issue, right? Where you have a player who's one of 11 on the field, but whose parents maybe or grandparents sometimes or whatever, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's just them themselves that focus only on individual achievement. What is success? Well, I'm working with a D1 soccer player right now where she measures her success and kind of rightfully so. She's a forward. She's closest to the goal. She likes to contribute to her team, and she contributes to her team by scoring goals. Right?
Right,
And that's an
right.
important measure of success. But what I'm debating with her on right now is that your only measure of success? Because if it is, then how can you ever really have a great game if you don't score? And if you don't score, can you have a great game? And the answer is yes, you can. Like we know that you can play poorly yet do something awesome in the game. But overall, Liam's a great example. Okay, so Liam is a great example of the opposite mindset of what I work with. Okay, so George, my firstborn. So keep in mind, I work mostly with females, but this is male too. I just tend to know females a little bit better. But my oldest George will play a good game, maybe even a great game, maybe even score a great goal. But he will fixate on the one thing that maybe one or two things that he really botched up, right? He's that kind of player. And then I've got Liam, who's 10, a little crazy. And here, the great example, a couple years ago, he had this game. It was a bad game, Jill. It was not a good game. I mean, I would love to sit there and tell you I love my kids and I will tell them all the time that they did great, but I know the sport and I was like, that was terrible. That was like, he played terrible. And I knew his coach he wasn't listening. He just, it was just not a good game for him. And I don't know if they won or lost, but I do remember he ended up scoring a goal off a volley. So a corner kick comes across, he gets his body in the right. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And he had recently seen Lionel Messi do it, and he was really excited with himself. I'm just glad he didn't take his shirt off because I was like, that's not allowed. You're only 10. And he comes off the field. And I mean, I see his coach, by the way, has already talked to him a little bit because his coach was not pleased, and I don't blame him. Liam came off the field, and I was like, oh, that was a rough one, huh, buddy? And he's like, no, what? I had a great game. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, did you see my goal? And it was in that moment where I was like, oh, his brain is wired and how he processes is wired differently. So granted, he's a little delusional. He needs to come to you have to be able to critique your play. But I'll tell you, mentally, when it comes after performance, that is still what he focuses on. And mentally, he's in a better place. I don't have to worry about him so much as I do my 15-year-old who's like, have we let that game go? It's a week later, right? Have you let that mistake go? Because by the way, you have another play coming up. And that's usually what we work on. So, I think and I know I did kind of a roundabout answer to that with you. And because I don't really know that there is one. Yeah, I worry. And I know as a former competitive athlete, I unnecessarily put some pressure on my kids. And probably, as a coach, I had great moments, I think, and I had moments that I'm probably not proud of where I didn't say the right things. I didn't reinforce the right things because it's, by the way, we forget that anything competitive, I don't care what it is emotional. Anything that, and that's okay. It's good. But we often sometimes forget then to help our athletes on how to process that emotion. I can't tell you the number of times I shouldn't have said, don't worry about it. Be confident. You're good. Get out, wanting them, or car rides home, right? When you've got an upset player who's not happy with their game, maybe even your little angel sheds a tear, and to help them not stop feeling that, but to work through that and then become resilient on the other side, right? That's the whole point. When you go up and you miss a penalty kick or whatever, a free throw in basketball, 3-2, and you're at the plate, those are defining moments that you, like you just said with your softball, you'll never forget that. And what's important isn't so much the outcome. I mean, yeah, I would like to be successful every time, but it's just not going to happen. Is how we process. The lady, her name is Shay Haddo. She's out in California. She says, and I think rightly so, it's a growth mindset thing, right? So rather than outcome, or rather than success and failure, maybe you got the outcome you wanted or the lesson you needed. And so if we can get people, and I'm there too, because everybody I coach is a whole lot alike how I was in the sport, any sport, good moments or bad moments, is, very unforgiving to themselves. They never talk the way they speak to themselves to another player, is to getting, and you see this mindset movement, by the way, everywhere. I see it on LinkedIn in the workplace. I see it on Facebook. I see it socially with friends. This growth mindset idea of what we do and how we process it, which why I ended up on the name Mind to Define. Liam defined his game with a singular successful moment, and it was a pretty moment. It was beautiful. It was a textbook volley that went into the goal. I couldn't have scripted it any better than that. But yet I've got, also another kid who defines his whole performance negatively by a moment. And I think a lot of us do that. I know that I do. I may go back, Jill, and I will listen when this podcast comes out, and I know me, and I know that I'll hear a stutter. I'll be like, I forgot to say whatever. And I can either fixate on that and I can be negative about it and think about, let that hold me back, or I can recognize all the good parts that hopefully were said, and I can build on and do even a better job on the next one. And that's really, I hate saying my dad was right, and he knows it and he loves it, but he was right when he said, so many times we get into the car after a game, and he loved to break it down, and it drove me nuts. He wasn't a yeller, but he, loved to break down. Like, he wanted to know what I was thinking. He wanted to know why I did something. And man, I was tired of talking about it. But he would say all the time, sports is so much like real life. And he's right. And if these kids, to your point, don't get anything but the skilling and drilling, we all eventually stop playing. Even if I go play old lady soccer right now, right? And I'm 48, so I might be playing with people my age, but by the way, we were all competitive once, and we still feel competitive in the moment, even if our bodies don't wanna do what we wanted to
Right.
do.
Right.
And even if
And
we're
then we pay
right,
for
and even if
it.
we're really sore the next day and can't get out of bed, we're all that way, but the sport as you know it, my dear Marin, who's 13, my dear George, who's 15, all my kids, all of them, the sport as you know it will end for you one day. And if you got nothing from it other than I was the best soccer player on my team, then I think it's wasted.
Well, yeah, because life is full of failures, and none of us want that, and no, I don't want that for my kids. But if I don't let them fail and experience that, then they are absolutely screwed when I'm
Right.
gone. Like, it sucks. We do not want to see anyone fail. But I guess something that came to mind when you were talking about specifically with your dad is, and everybody is different, and maybe this is me being a sensitive person, but I would never want to get into the car after a game where maybe I had, let's just use the softball thing, like, where my dad, like, where it was like, well, what were you thinking? Why didn't you this or why didn't you that? Like, if it's a positive conversation or wanting to talk about it, then that, yes, I could see being very powerful.
And even I think parents forget, I forget too in the moment. Don't get me wrong. Like I tease and I'm like, God, I do this and I talk with my players. And then sometimes when I'm in a parental moment, I'm a hypocrite, right? Because I fall right into that pretty easily. And I was a coach too. So I was a player. I was also official, right? And I was a coach, a parent. I ran a club. So I'm like, oh, gosh, I feel like I have most of the perspectives down. And when I'm siloed into one of them, I still sometimes I'm like, God, I could have done that right a whole lot better. And I've even owed a kid an apology or two because I hammered on one when they didn't want to talk, or I maybe wasn't there to process something a kid had fixated on and just wanted George to get over it, right? Um,
Mm.
because we're uncomfortable with it. We don't like to see it. Sometimes what I find anyway is a parent's the best moments I think I've had as a parent now. So just speaking in the parent moment is when I've remained neutral. No matter if my heart broke for my kid at the, penalty kick line and she shot it wide. I mean, my heart hurts just as much as her heart hurts. In a way, maybe even more because I can also remember all the times I did it. And I
Yeah.
know how bad that hurts and I'm upset for her. But sometimes the best moments I've had is when I let them lead. To be fair, there's a line with players too that I find between, they bully themselves or they BS themselves, right? So, and they have to figure that out. There are times when, and every kid's different. There are times that I've heard from a friend that, a kid came off and she's like, yeah, she said the post game talk, you told them they sucked. And I was like, I never said those words at all, right? So like they did
Mm.
not perform well, but I never said those words. That's what this player heard and took with her. And that's all her. And she has to grow and learn from that. So I think that one of the things is coaches and parents, and it's hard, especially also if you're a coach parent, that's even harder,
Ugh.
is sometimes remaining neutral as much as we can and letting them fight their way through it. That's what we want, right? That's what we want. On the other side comes resilience, not mental toughness per se, this tough word that goes around. I'm not saying that. You can be super competitive and still I'll give you a great example. Liam gets his butt kicked regularly by a wrestler who cries his way through every period. He cries.
Oh,
He's a tremendous wrestler, but he is so emotional. And I'm not judging. That's not a judgment. He is just feeling all the feels, and he will kick my kid's butt and he will cry the entire time. So here's my question. Is he successful or is he not? Back in the day, and I mean our days when we were young, showing that kind of emotion wasn't necessarily a good thing. But maybe for him it is. Maybe processing it that way is his healthy way of coping, and he still performs. So sometimes with the players I work with and even the parents, it's redefining what success looks like, because there's lots of ways to do that. If I got a player who walks up to bat like the player and then doesn't swing the bat because she'd rather maybe get walked and not strike out, we don't want that. We don't want that.
No.
So, but if she goes up the next time and she takes 3 swings and maybe they're not all strikes, is it completely successful? No. But is it a move in the right direction? Absolutely, yes. And then I would tell her that's a successful at bat, right? It's for her. And then what's the next step? And what's the next step? So again, the thing about outcomes, that's how we measure wins and losses. And I get that. And sometimes I very rarely get pushback on mental training. I think most people get that it's needed, but I really try to call mine mental practice, right? They go to skills practice. They go to, regular practice. We know that you have to condition, right? You have to run outside of your sport if you're in a sport that requires that. You have to lift weights outside your sport if your sport requires that. So is mental training. We need to practice failing so that we know how to react when we fail in the moment we don't want the failure. We prime the central nervous system to feel that, so it's not so shocking. And by the way, the very next step is recovery, right? So the 3 pillars of my program are optimum ownership. So we talk about what you can own and what you don't own, especially in a team sport. I'm sure you probably saw that in cheer, right? Bases own a certain thing, flyers, and I don't know if I have all the right vernacular, but they can't own everything, right? They cannot. And many times I find the people that I work with are just like me. They'll own the whole, I lost the game for my team. Nope. Nope. You're one of 5 out there, or one of 7, or one of 11. You have a percentage you get to own, but not everything, even if it was the last shot, which we tend to remember more because that's called the recency effect. And it doesn't matter. You didn't. There were umpteen other times your team had a chance to score and they didn't, right? But that player will often go and own it. And then guess what it does? It just hurts their future performance. So ownership's one. Growth mindset, that's a big one. And I'm glad it's here to stay. It came from education. And, it's really about taking those moments that are, things to learn from and that we can improve pretty much anything. And the last one is that courageous confidence, where it's being confident yourself when you don't know what the outcome's going to be, right? I'm really confident when I know it's going to go my way, but when I don't know it's going to go my way, that's when it comes to kind of brass tacks. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And those are the moments that we struggle with in the mental thing. You'll see players, athletes actually protect themselves by shrinking back. I did it, right? I don't take that one shot that's a little crazy because the miss will hurt a whole lot more than it going in. If we're going to put our kids and have them be this competitive, I love it. I really do. Let's be sure they get something out of it that become better people, right? Better versions of themselves for whenever it's done.
100%. And that mental practice, it should end up being a requirement. And I think that while we are still figuring all that out, maybe it is definitely too soon to say it should be on the youth end side too, but I don't think it should be far off. I think every single age, no matter what level you're in, should learn that aspect as well. That is just as important.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people too that'll say, not, and I'm not bagging on any coaches here because I was a team coach as well. Jill, I was a team coach and I had a psych degree and I did not insert mental training the way now I would go back and do it differently, right? I would insert some of that as just part of what we do, right? We would celebrate walking up and taking PKs. We wouldn't just penalty kicks, by the way, sorry from anybody's not soccer. But we wouldn't just take them as a station as practice. We would take them like you take it in the game, where you're there all by yourself, right? If you're going to do kicks from the mark at the end because nobody can score and you just have to shoot, right? It's a different to walk up there from half line by yourself to the mark, face off with the goalie, also the goalie themselves, while an official's there, another official's on the line, fans are watching. It may or may not be quiet. There's so many more variables that come with what we call maximum performance, which is what games are, versus typical performance, which is what you would call practice, right? And so I chuckle a lot about the mindset part of so many things. So that's one of them, right? So we don't practice it the way we do it in the game, and then we set them up there and we wonder why they either fail or they're so jittery they can hardly hold their hands still. There's part of that's just performance, but part of that's because we didn't practice that, number one. And then number two, I used this example in another talk one time, and I think it's funny. The mental side, they'll say, any sport will be like, it's 90% of the game. It's 80% of the game. It's whatever. And I can argue, actually, it's 100% of the game. Like everything we do is initiated mentally. Even the passing. Now, if I go out and I take a soccer ball and I pass with my daughter, I've already automated all those because I've been practicing those skills since I was little and I don't have to think about it anymore, but it's my mind doing it. We know if that part of that mind's damaged, that part of the body might not work. But so I could argue that it's 100% mental. I mean, the physical training is important, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more to the mental piece. When I was back in grad school and I was helping that team in Littleton, I had a girl, she was arguably the best player on the team. She was the only one holding herself back, right? And she was driving me crazy. And by the way, I was 24 years old that time and I didn't really have a filter and I was getting on her and I said, I don't remember her name, but I was like, anticipate is what I kept telling her. Anticipate. And after the game, she pulled me aside and said, I don't know what anticipate means. And so I tried to explain the definition. I was like, it's to make an educated guess about when they're going to pass and you step between. And she looked at me like I had two heads. And so I had to go home back to my apartment and I'm like, how am I going to teach someone how to do what I've just been yelled at for 20 years to do? And I figured it out. That's mental. It's a mental choice. We get 3-year-olds. I don't know if if your little ones have played soccer, but you do little 3v3 soccer, right? And you get the littles out there and they're so cute, right? Some of them we think are going to be future Olympians because they go out there and they happen to be really aggressive. And that's pretty important when you're in a youth sport. Of course, the aggression usually wins out some of those natural things. But I find it so cute when we've spent 3 years of their life, remember, by the way, telling them, don't hit, don't push, share, don't take, all these things to norm them socially, right? So we can be good social creatures. And then we stick them on a soccer field and we're like, go get the ball. Some of them, like Marin went out there, like we had no opinions of what Marin was going to do. She went out there like, oh my gosh, heck yeah. And she went crazy. Like she went out there taking the ball. She was shoving people. It was like she needed to be let out of the cage. But it's not surprising that most of the kids look at you like, are you crazy? Like, you want me to go push her? Well, kind of, but not really. A soccer push. So it's always a mental thing. They're processing that and trying to come to terms, and some do right away. Some take a little time. My son George was one who he stayed outside of the the huddle they do, the what you call clumpy soccer. They play in a mass.
Okay,
It's almost like a scrum for rugby, right? They're they're in this little mass and they're just following the ball around. Well, Georgie did not do that. He stayed on the outside. He was like, why would I get in there? I'll wait for the ball to pop out. And then maybe, just maybe, if I'm not doing a superhero move because I'm 5 years old, I might go get the ball. And it was just seeing that difference among the kids. I just, to go back to your earlier question, I can see why a lot of people like my mom, like others who are like, whoa, this is crazy. And I think sometimes it can be, but I think also a lot of really good stuff can come out if we focus on the lessons, right? And keep in mind that these human beings are in development and you can still, right? You can still be pretty badass about winning, right? You can be hardcore all the time and yet celebrate failure. You can still push to be number one and yet look at not only the score or the outcome as the definer of, was that a successful exhibition for you and or your team? They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
I am so glad you said that. Like, that really kind of just gave me goosebumps, and I need more people to hear that and understand that. So, Jen, how do people get a hold of you to learn more about you, learn more about Mind to Define, and just spread the word?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. So I do have a website that's in development, but I have a contact page. So it's www.mindtodefine.com, like mine, like a little kid says, mine, mindtodefine.com. Yeah. And I am on social. I've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And it's, I think it's at Coach Jen MTD, but Mind to Define we'll pull it up. And I've tried to post a bit more there and, thoughts. And there's actually a really great one that came up today that I had shared a few years ago personally. And I'm like, that's a really good share for mindset for anything we do.
And I will make sure all of this is also accessible on the show notes page at jilldevine.com. I am so glad I got to talk to you about this. I mean, I'm so glad I got to talk to you because you're my friend, but
here
this is so important, and we need to make sure that we are doing what we can to get these athletes to know that the mental is just as important as the physical, if not more important.
Right. Exactly.
Well, thank you for your time, Jen. And you will have to come back and give us a little update in like a year or so and how you're ruling the world with your mental vibe.
Thank you. I'd love to.
All right, as we wrap up this week's conversation, I want to just remind you about Elemental Aesthetics and the membership options they have for you, and also talk a little bit about those add-ons that I mentioned earlier, such as the sauna, the infrared sauna, and the benefits of using that, similar to those with the traditional sauna, but they include better sleep, relaxation, reduced blood pressure, weight loss, clear and tighter skin, improved circulation, and so much more. And then there's the salt room. This is such an amazing therapy. I love it. It helps with asthma, allergies, acne, eczema. Oh my gosh, the wintertime for me is awful with my eczema. I can go and sit in the salt room at Elemental Aesthetics and it's just a game changer. So check out those new services and the membership options at elementalaesthetics.com. And before you go, just a quick reminder that I would love if you would subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You are helping it get in the hands of others when you do that, because the more subscribers and the more ratings and the more reviews, I don't know how it all works. I just know that it works. So thank you in advance. And you can also follow along on social media and at jilldevine.com. Thank you for your support of Two Kids and a Career.